Welcome to another edition of ReconsiDer Forum on Drug Policy. I'm your host for tonight, Peter Christ, and I think we have what's going to be an interesting show. We're taping this show on December 8th, 1998. That's interesting for two reasons. One is a recent Supreme Court decision just came down, which may have a little impact on what we're going to be discussing here today on searches and seizures. And also, this is the guest we have today is involved in a case that's currently going on in the city of Syracuse. And I think you'll find it interesting because it has to do with your freedom to move around in a safe and secure manner in your own person and effects, as the law says. My guest is Mark David Blum.
Hi, Pete. Nice to
Mark.
meet you.
Good to be here.
Good to be here.
People know you because if they've watched the show before, you've been on before, and you're a local attorney from Fayetteville.
That's correct.
And you also have had some success. Just to give a kudo for you, the case that probably most people will know you from is the Balduzzi case.
The police officer here in the city of Syracuse on the First Amendment.
Right, inappropriately fired, interfering with his freedom of speech.
Well, he testified at a Citizens Review Board about what he suspected as being police corruption, and they dealt with it the way they normally deal with it. They fired him, and he sued for his First Amendment rights and was returned to work and paid handsomely. Okay,
so now this case, you're still crawling around in the early part of the Constitution and the first 10 amendments.
That's one way to look at it.
This has more to do with the Fourth Amendment than the First Amendment.
That's correct.
And the case has to do with improper search and seizure.
Well, it's more than improper search and seizure. What's going on in Syracuse, there appears to be a real rash or a pattern, or some people would say a policy by the Syracuse Police Department to not only stop people and conduct investigations, but in the course of these routine investigations, they will conduct strip searches and even cavity searches to actually explore rectums of people that they've stopped for routine vehicle and traffic.
Okay, now a police officer has a right to stop and pat somebody down. If I remember from my days on the job, we do have a right to do that, looking for weapons for our own safety and to secure.
Police officer safety is very critical. When a police officer pulls somebody over, the general thinking these days is that they don't know who they're pulling over, and that person can be a threat. So police nowadays are trained to perceive everybody as a threat, and they certainly have the right to be safe as they conduct their investigation. So patting somebody down, feeling out their pockets and such to determine if there's the presence of a weapon is acceptable behavior by the Supreme Court.
And police officers do have a right to conduct strip searches under certain circumstances.
Not on street corners.
Well, no, but under certain circumstances.
Under certain circumstances.
In a lock-up situation where they have taken somebody into custody and they're going to be putting them in a cell, or they're going to be locking them up or something, they have a right to search them more thoroughly after they've arrested them.
But that's not police officer security anymore. Then you're getting into jail security.
Right.
Then you've got an individual who's been charged with a crime and he's brought to a jail, and even then the rights to strip search aren't absolute.
What I'm trying to do is, for the audience, I'm trying to set the extreme parameters on each end where everything's legal.
Well, I was going to do just that for you.
And then we'll get into this big murky world in the middle where we really are.
On the concept of strip searches, and that's the best way to see the boundaries of it, the Supreme Court has looked at the question, and they said that when you bring somebody into a jail on even a minor offense, a misdemeanor, assault, a DWI, something like that, there's no reason to be conducting a full strip search or a cavity search of this person. That's unreasonable unless you have a reason to believe there's something there. So even the Supreme Court has said that officer safety, jail security allows for strip searches or searches of prisoners. Still, they draw a line. It has to be a serious crime, or they have to have something more. General strip searches for the sake of security don't fly anymore.
Okay, so now let's move into the murky area where your case lays, or couple cases lay.
Several.
And that is an officer stopping somebody without making an arrest. Right?
Without a charge.
I'm just trying to fill this in. Without any charge.
Right.
But just on suspicion. They see a car driving around. It might have
two black males.
Two black males, and we'll get into the profiling thing in a minute, but it has two people in it that to them are somehow suspicious, and they pull them over and they get them out of the car. They pat them down for their own protection. Maybe shine a flashlight inside the car to make sure there's no guns sticking out from underneath the seat or anything like that.
Right.
And then what has been happening, I understand, in the city of Syracuse, and I'm sure this happens in other places in the country too, they are then either at the scene or taking them to someplace else that isn't a secure lockup. They are then searching them further,
much further,
without any charge being placed.
Right. In the case that's been getting a lot of attention in the newspapers, two late teenage, 18, 19, 20-year-old black males driving around. They're stopped by the police. They're gotten out of the car. They're patted down. The car is searched, and then a paddy wagon is summoned. and they're both taken inside the paddy wagon, and there the police try to strip search them, and not only strip search, but rubber glove cavity search. I mean, they really wanted to do a thorough investigation. One consented and he was searched, the other refused, at which point he was taken in the back of a police car to a local apartment complex where the police do this all the time, and he was given a thorough cavity search on the premises by force, resulting in some broken bones in his hand and other injuries.
Okay, now we keep saying, and this is where we get into the profiling.
That's one situation. Another situation, they drag somebody behind a market. Today I talked to somebody who was just dragged in an alley behind Radio Shack on Erie Boulevard. It's happening all over. They're not even looking for private places anymore because the apartment complex that they used to use is now being sued, so they can't use them anymore.
These things sound, these situations, if I think of them in my mind and create a picture, they sound like scenes out of Schindler's List, not out of America with the Constitution and everything else. I mean,
if you
it's
can
scary.
imagine, I mean, just say hypothetically, I don't know, somebody named Rita's walking down the street, a woman, it would be a classic example, and they pull her over and then they just start talking to her, and then they bend her over the front of a car, yank her pants down by force, put on a rubber glove, and start poking around inside of her. Society's going to be very irate, very upset. But because these are black males, well, maybe we're being a little less sensitive about it, and we really don't seem to care. It's been happening for a long time. It's been happening since at least 1989 that we've been able to discover.
Well, you mentioned 1989. Didn't the city of Syracuse pay a lawsuit on a strip search from, I believe it was a pregnant Hispanic woman that was searched?
Last year, the city of Syracuse paid a $47,000 settlement to a 8.5 month to a woman who at the time in 1989 was 8.5 months pregnant. They had followed her from the airport. Eventually they pulled her over in an apartment building. They took her inside, or no, in the hallway of the apartment building, and where they proceeded to conduct a strip search of this woman. I don't know if they also did a cavity search, but they found nothing. And they got sued. They paid a judgment. Then Police Chief Lee Hunt changed the policy of the City of Syracuse Police Department. Says no more strip searches on the streets, no more cavity searches on the streets. Well, here we are 10 years later, and it's happening all over again. And according to the current chief of police, what policy? I don't know anything about any policy, which really begs the question, where does a policy go? Where does an official government rule or regulation just disappear to? It seems more clear that Syracuse has decided to deal with its crime problem by heavy-handedness. You ask about Schindler's List and Gestapo tactics. These guys, they have guns. They're running around with profiles, basically giving them unbridled, unfettered discretion to stop whoever they want. And apparently, once they've conducted the stop or effected the stop, they're allowed to continue on as far as they want after that.
This, now, we're getting into the area of profiling, and profiling, just to bring the audience up to date, profiling started back, and I'll do this, I'll fill in this part because as we talk a lot,
you know,
I'm older and I got a little more seniority than you. Profiling started back in the 60s, really, as I have learned, by the military over in Europe when they were chasing terrorists. And basically profiling started with the concept of there'd be a crime committed. And the police would come in to investigate the crime. And then from that investigation and the evidence that they would find connected with the crime, they would start to create a profile of the kind of person that might have committed this crime because of the evidence that they had. And we see profiling, there's a program on television now on Saturday nights called Profiler.
Right.
Which in fact does that. They start from a crime being committed and then try to figure out what kind of person would commit that crime. What profiling is being used at now is no crime committed.
Well, they're working backwards.
Right. They're starting out with looking around for somebody that looks like they might be guilty of something.
Well, they have a list of you know, police science has gotten so professional that they can spot a criminal before he's committed a crime. They have a list of criteria. The Supreme Court has said, yeah, that's fine with us. This person, I can look at him on the street and he's a criminal. Or at least he's criminal enough that I can stop him if I'm a police officer. And I can take his clothes off, and I can do a cavity search, and I can do everything I want. He doesn't have to have been involved in criminal activity. He doesn't have to have been acting suspicious. He could have been having lunch with his wife. But because in my mind, based on my training, this guy fits whatever in my mind is a criminal, I can then start commencing a police investigation against him.
And I don't have the book here with me.
Because all drug dealers, you know,
they all look alike.
They all look alike. They do just about everything. I'll let you do it. But profiling has been expanded so much that police officers can now just reach to just about everybody. I'll let you give the specific examples.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Well, the specific examples, as you know, there's a wonderful book out there, recommended reading for everybody, and that is Lawrence Miller is the author, and the title of the book is drug warriors and their prey. And in there they have 2.5 pages of list of profiling, and they are things like had a pale complexion, had a dark complexion. My 3 favorite ones are at airports, being amongst the first group of people to get off the plane, being amongst the last group of people to get off the plane, or being amongst the middle group of people to get off the plane. So basically, everybody, the profiling is so loose that pretty basically anybody, you can just grab anybody off the street and search them if you're using a profile, because the profiling is so broad it just covers everybody.
And it's impacting here in Syracuse because the police department has created these direct deployment teams whose sole mission in life is to go out and eradicate street level crime. So they're driving around, they're looking for people who look like they're troublemakers. And who have they got in mind? Who knows? But they're patrolling high crime areas, predominantly in this market at least, predominantly black, poor. They're driving around with, I guess the majority of people there, you know, or the majority of the criminals that they're going to deal with there are probably black or of minority. And so in their mind they start to create an image that a black kid is probably a criminal. Now, if they pull this person over, if they stop them, if they find contraband, they can then go into court and say, well, he fit a profile. Okay, and then the courts will say, okay, the original stop and the search and everything that came from the search was lawful. That's the problem with it, because you get officers working a beat with unfettered discretion who are told to go out and find criminals. Well, so and there's no records. We don't know how many people that they've stopped and searched and who walked away.
That would be one of the good things that come out of this case.
That's one of the things that we're going to be pushing for, as a matter of fact. I believe there's only one police department in the country that actually keeps records of stops and searches that don't result in arrests, and that's what, the Maryland State Police.
Yeah, Maryland State,
and they're doing so under federal court order.
Yeah, just again, so the audience knows what we're talking about. If a cop pulls you over, takes you out of the car, takes you behind a building, strip searches you, cavity searches you, and finds nothing.
And lets you go.
And then lets you go, there's no record of that.
It never happened.
There's nothing written down, there's no report written, there's nothing written.
That's right.
If a police officer goes out on a stolen bicycle report, he writes a report on it, okay? But in this situation, there's no record kept, so we don't know. So when the police say that one of the reasons that they use profiling is they say that it works. Well, the reason that they say that it works is because they only keep track of the people that they catch. So if they search 100 people, and out of 100 people they catch 5, the only ones that there's any reports written on is the 5 that they catch.
And look how great they were.
So it looks like the profiling is perfect.
Right,
because you don't have track of the other 95, who, by the way, just for the audience out there, the other 95 is you.
Right, and they should come to my office and they should join this lawsuit, because it's got to stop.
Yeah, if it's happened to anybody that's listening to this program, and you either call your own attorney or get a hold of Mark Blum, and if you don't want to hire him as an attorney, don't hire him, but at least have your attorney get a hold of him and package this case together, because this is going on every day. The other thing that's interesting about this is we keep mentioning blackmail, 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 blackmail. The definition by William Bennett, who was the Bill Bennett, who was the ex-drug czar under the Bush administration, his definition of the 80% of the cocaine users in America is white males, high school educated with a full-time job. Now, let me tell you, they aren't doing these strip searches in Fayetteville and Manlius and Cazenovia and Camillus. Where they're doing these strip searches is black males who make up, according to Bill Bennett, by those statistics, 20% of the cocaine users. They're the ones that are getting yanked around. They're the ones that we're not keeping track at. And it's easier to do it to them because basically they're not affluent. Their parents aren't going to complain. They don't have the money to be able to afford to hire attorneys. And it's an easy, bullies always pick on the weak guy. They don't pick on the big, strong guy. And that's what we have going on here.
But that's where these civil cases could come in handy. The Supreme Court has accepted profiling excuse me, as a means of police science. And they've so expanded, as you gave us one example, so expanded the rules that it applies to just about anybody. The local, the state governments, the local governments, they say profiling is okay, and so they pass rules, regulations, laws that allow the police departments to proceed forward on profiling. But the only way to stop the unreasonableness, the only way to get back in their face, unfortunately, is to say, hey, I represent a community standard that even though the Supreme Court says it's okay and the state of New York says it's okay, we're not going to allow this to happen in our town. It's not going to happen to my kids. It's not happening to white women. It's not happening to young children, so nobody's really caring. When it starts happening in Fayetteville, Manlius, then there'll be a large uproar. But right now, until the people start banding together, start suing, saying this is not the standard, this is not the way we're going to deal with it, the problem's going to continue.
It's the it's the story about the frog.
The frog.
Yeah, if you take a frog and you want to cook a frog, and you got a pot of boiling water, and you take the frog and you throw the live frog in the boiling water, the frog's going to jump right out. But if you take the frog and you put it in cold water and turn the heat on, the frog will swim around as the water heats up until the frog dies. Just gradually, the water keeps getting warmer and warmer and warmer, and that's what this stuff is. This stuff is coming to your house if we let this drug war and this tactic of the drug war continue. Another thing I want to get at is, if we don't do this stuff, we can't win the drug war, can we?
If you don't do what stuff?
These kind of just yanking randomly people off the street and search them and stuff like that. I mean, if we're going to, it's the problem when you get into a certain circumstance. It's like when we were in Vietnam, we had to burn down those villages because that's the only way that you could possibly win that kind of war. Now, nobody, particularly prior to 1970, nobody took the moment to think that maybe if you're in that kind of a war, that maybe the thing to do is to end the war and go home, that you shouldn't be doing that. But the trying to enforce these drug laws, where most laws, as we've talked about this before, most laws, if you get assaulted, you get raped, you get robbed, the first thing you do is run and call the police and report it and give a description of the person that did that to you and everything else.
Right.
On the other hand, when it comes to if you buy drugs from somebody, there's nobody running out and reporting this deal to the police. If you sell me cocaine and I buy it from you, neither one of us is looking around for a cop to report this crime that was just committed.
That's true.
So the police, in order to be able to enforce those kind of laws, have to violate. You can't have those kind of laws in a constitutional democracy.
Well,
you have to
take
violate
it one step further. These laws that you're talking about, if I sell you cocaine hypothetically and you rip me off, who do I go to? I can't call the cops. First of all, they're going to arrest me, and second of all, the process of arrest is going to result in a cavity search. But that's besides the point. So I can't call the police. So how do I square my business, my commercial dispute with you?
I take it to Smith & Wesson.
Right, or I use a high-powered machine gun on a street corner instead of a high-powered lawyer in a courtroom.
Exactly.
So the drug war is arguably out there to lower crime, to get better control in society. And it seems like that what it's doing is it's creating more crime. It's creating tension in the community. It's creating conflict. Now people can't turn to the police. Everybody who drives down the street is susceptible to the police. I met this 19-year-old kid today who was a victim of one of these searches, and he's ruined. I mean, here's a kid, grew up, son of a pastor, a well-adjusted, happy, normal child, never saw violence in his life, never saw anything negative, and now drives around in absolute total fear of the police. Some of your listeners may think that's really funny and hurrah, and another black person running scared from the police. That may be a good thing in this town. I don't know. That may be the way they want it.
That's not,
but that's not.
Sure
it can't be
there,
that
right?
way. Okay, that's just not the way the world can be. That's what the drug war is creating. It's creating this tension. It's you know, forget the dollars and cents of what it's doing to the criminal justice system. What bothers me personally is what it's doing to my rights, to my daughter's rights, to the rights that we're leaving, you know, for future generations. Where is the Fourth Amendment? Where is your right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures? Well, the Supreme Court has pretty much taken away the lines because of the drug war. Because like you said, there is no crime. You have to go out and hunt down the crime. You've got to hunt down the criminal. You got to design a picture of what this criminal looks like. And that's where you're coming up with the problems that you're having today.
It's one of the from the less seasoned of the drug warriors that I debate with occasionally make the mistake of throwing into the mix that if you're talking about legalizing drugs because you can't win this drug war, then you might as well legalize murder and rape, and because people are going to continue to do that even though there's laws against it. But I explained that just a few minutes ago. When there's a rape or a murder, or there's a victim, there's a complainant who wants justice.
Right.
The drug war is a different set of circumstances. The drug war is everybody involved in the transaction is a willing co-conspirator. And you have to then intrude into that in some other way. And you can't do that with the Fourth Amendment.
And you have to literally kick down these walls of privacy to get there.
That's like with the rebellion.
Smoke a joint, get behind the wheel of a car, go out and kill somebody, fine.
Go to
pay
jail.
the price.
Right.
You smoke a joint, kill a box of Oreos, and deal with it on your treadmill the next day. It's not the role of government to get involved. And that's what this is all about. It's really a tug of war between the rights of the individual and the paternalistic attitude of people who are in power, who think they know better than the individual, that they have the right. That's like telling excuse me, somebody that you can't commit suicide, like it should be illegal to commit suicide. How do you enforce the
law?
law?
How do you stop that?
Yeah, I mean, get out of my life. If I'm going to commit suicide, try and stop me. If somebody wants to get stoned, try and stop them. Let them alone. You know, there's a lot more important things. Even this Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton issue has got to be more important than the drug war, and that's just not important at all.
And that's not important either.
Because the only people who are getting harmed, the reason it's gotten so bad is because of the tension. Government has gotten so high-tech in its efforts to stop the drug war that the businesses responded accordingly, and that's all this is. This is a commercial transaction. Buyer, seller, manufacturer, distributor. That's all it is.
There was a piece in the paper just this past week in the local Post-Standard about the I don't know if you caught it or not, about the prison building, and we have spent $700 and some million more in the last 10 years building prisons in New York State. And we have decreased the educational budget in New York State by $600 and some million. So if you want to know where the money's coming for your prisons, it's coming from the money for your kids' education in your schools.
But state prison cells draw federal tax dollars for the state. It employs a large segment of the population. I mean, there's a lot of residual effect. The drug war is an economy all its own.
Oh, certainly.
I mean, police are working on commission.
But who do you want living next door? A graduate from the local high school or a graduate from the local prison?
That's the question. But I'm not in control, and someday maybe they'll make me DA or something, and I'll have that say. But until then, I'm just one voter and one person's opinion.
Why do you want to get into that nefarious profession?
Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to get in there and clean up Dodge.
Let's talk a little bit about.
That's what we do anyway. I mean, with the Balduzzi case and the case that we had against the pedophile priest and cases like these strip searches, the private district attorneys, we're out there doing what the government is not doing. Mm-hmm. It's so busy protecting these officers and helping them find ways to make more arrests, to seize more money, to make more, higher statistics so they can get reelected, that they're really forgetting what this is all about, and they're not prosecuting the bad cops, the bad police chiefs, the bad mayors, the people who are involved in establishing these conspiracies.
There's a couple other things with this, and that is that there's a what they used to call in the old days a flying squad. There's a special unit that's set up in the city of Syracuse.
5 of them. Direct deployment teams.
Direct deployment teams, and this is what they go out and do.
That's right.
This is what they're sent out to do. And there was also a meeting, I understand, with, I believe it was with the chief of police with the ACLU.
3 weeks
before your
3
incident.
weeks before my kid got hit, but apparently several weeks before several others got hit and after others before them. Yeah, the ACLU sat down with the mayor and the chief of police and said, strip searches, cavity searches on the street, they're illegal. The Constitution says so, the Supreme Court says so, the law says so. That was 3 weeks before my kid got it. So there is either a blind, either the attitude of City Hall and the chief of police is let's just pretend it doesn't exist, which I don't believe, or there's a more overt policy of this is the way that we're going to clean up the streets of Syracuse and look good to the voters when we run for re-election.
Or there's a third choice.
Which is?
The chief of police and the mayor are so profoundly stupid they don't know what's going on in their police department.
I have no comment.
But I'm just saying, I mean, they could admit to either one of those three, but those are the only three they get to pick from.
Pretty much, but Mr. Foodie, the chief of police, is also an attorney and he should know better.
I'm not, and by the
the
way,
fact that he doesn't know better, I mean, that says a lot.
I'm not making this accusation about them. I'm just saying that there's only one of three things you can explain having a meeting with the ACLU and saying this isn't going on, and then 3 weeks later having it happen by one of your sergeants.
Well, there's a fourth reason, and we discovered this in the Balduzzi case, and it's just institutional arrogance.
Okay.
We're right because we decided we're right. We're going to do it this way, and if you don't like it, prove it otherwise.
Now, the city has appeared to step up to the light on this one. They have suspended the sergeant that was in charge of the unit that evening.
They suspended one sergeant who is in charge of one unit involved in a particular search.
Okay.
There are other teams conducting these same searches in other quadrants of the city.
And do we have reason to believe that there have been these same kind of searches that have happened when this sergeant wasn't even on duty at the time or present at the searching?
I have police reports signed by police officers that established strip searches, cavity searches without the presence of this particular sergeant, although he was notified afterwards. But we have strip searches and cavity searches going on in areas of the city where this Sergeant Lindy and his team don't even patrol.
Oh, it's not Lieutenant Calley, it's Sergeant Lindy.
It's Sergeant Lindy, Lieutenant
Calley was the Vietnam War guy that they made a scapegoat
I
for
think,
everything
and from what I understand about Lindy, the only reason Lindy was fired was not because of what he did, it's what he didn't do. When you conduct one of these searches, when you're involved in illegal police activity, the first thing they tell you, Pete, and you know this, is that you got to file a charge. Even if it's a baloney charge, you got to file the charge because then you have something to trade. Because then the defendant is not likely to challenge the search because he's trying to save his neck and will cut a plea, and that includes a waiver of appeal. Mm-hmm. So that's the trade-off. In my kid's case, he's as clean as the snow. They had nothing. They couldn't charge him with anything, not even a seatbelt violation. And that's what Lindy got chewed out for at the public safety building, and that's why Lindy was fired, because he didn't charge this kid. If he had charged this kid, this case would have gone a whole different route, and nobody would have cared. Just like the second case that ran in the newspapers last week. So they're searching this guy's rectum, and they find a brown chunky substance in between the cheeks of his butt. You know, forget the jokes that go with it. I mean, it's a mess. It really is. It's got to stop. Really
that's the other aspect of this thing, that even if in one of these searches with no arrest in one of these searches, even if they find something, they can't use that in court anyways because the search is illegal. They have no right without a warrant.
The search
to do
is illegal. But the second kid, what I was saying is, he got caught. They claim to have found a substance on him in his cavities when they did the search. So now he is facing a criminal charge. Now he has to choose: fight the charge, take the risk of conviction, and going to jail in a long-term mandatory prison sentence, or cut a deal, make a plea, and forgive the search.
And the other side is going to be more willing to cut a good plea for him because they don't want him to sue and they don't want him to do that, and that's part of the deal.
Right, and the district attorney's office actually steps up to defend the municipality by enforcing a plea and not kicking the search that they themselves know is illegal. In fact, there's case law that says a district attorney's office that supports an illegal search exposes the county. So now it's not just the city of Syracuse taxpayers that are going to get hit soon, but it's the county of Onondaga taxpayers that are going to get hit because the district attorney's office is defending the police officers and defending these searches every day in criminal court.
There's a current series of articles that's going on for anybody out there that's listening that is on the internet from the Pittsburgh Gazette that has to do with, it's a series of 10 articles, and it has to do with overplays of prosecutors' offices and this kind of stuff. And I suggest anybody that's hooked up to the internet that has the time to just go to a search engine, type Pittsburgh Gazette in and go look at, I believe it's called Scales of Justice or something like that. You click on it, you'll see it. But this is not unique to Syracuse.
No.
This is going on all over the country.
That's right.
And it's hey, what do you say to the people that say, we're at war, Mark? This is just collateral damage.
What I say is, God made marijuana, man made beer. You choose who you prefer to stick with, you know? It does, sometimes you have to cut to heal. Sometimes you just have to say, this was a bad idea. It may have been good when Ronald Reagan really hyped it up and really pushed for the drug war, when he put Rehnquist in the Supreme Court and everything. But here we are, what, 15 years later? 20 years later? Enough is enough.
Yeah, in fact, it's...
We played your game, we spent your trillions of dollars, we got all these people killed, we've ruined all these people's lives. An entire generation of youth is wasted now because they're all carrying around drug charges for no good reason.
Yeah, some of them, a huge chunk of them can't vote, depending on the
charges. Can't vote, can't go to law school, will not be police officers, can't serve in the military, can't be productive members of society.
Can't get school loans when they get out of jail because they denied school loans if they got a drug
sergeant decided to conduct an illegal search and may or may not have found a possession of a small amount of drug that, what, 80–90% of the population of this country is probably using anyway? In one form, between prescription drug use and illicit drug use. I mean, drug use in this country it's something that we as human beings have decided that we're going to have for ourselves. We have advanced the point that we can make ourselves feel better, and I think we've just decided that we're going to. And ruining people's lives forever for a few minutes of personal pleasure is the wrong attitude that we should be taking towards our own children, our own families, and our own future.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful way to end this.
Hey.
Mark.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks for being here.
Anytime.
I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy this. And listen, this is something that you have to get involved in. Check our website. Get involved in this issue. It's not going to go away just because it goes away. It's only going to go away. In fact, I'll probably end it with this. We just got a couple seconds left. Bad things don't happen because of bad people. Bad things happen because good people keep their mouths shut. If this has happened to you, if you know people this has happened to, get a hold of an attorney, follow it up, fight it. We can stop this. Thanks for joining us tonight. Good night.